During our family trip, my daughter-in-law snapped at the hotel receptionist and barked, "Don't speak to the old woman. She's just the help." My son laughed. She had no idea I was the owner of the hotel. What I did afterward left her shaking. "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me through my story, and tell me which city you're watching from so I can see how far it travels." I had been waiting for this trip for months. At 72, I didn't often get chances to spend real time with my son Jay and his family. When he suggested a week in Miami, my heart filled with hope. Maybe I could finally get closer to Valentina, my daughter-in-law, who had stayed distant through all 5 years of their marriage. The 4-hour drive to the coastal paradise resort was full of Jay and Valentina chatting about spa days, tea service, and pricey dinners like I wasn't even there. Each time I tried to join in, asking about the kids or hinting at something we could all do together, Valentina would give a flat reply, and Jay would ignore me entirely. I should have noticed the warnings, but I wanted so badly to heal our family bond that I pushed it aside. The coastal paradise resort was one of my proudest accomplishments. Though my family didn't know, after my husband died when Jay was 12, I built my hotel business from nothing. I began with a tiny bed and breakfast, working 18 hours a day, scrubbing floors and taking bookings. Bit by bit, I grew it into 17 properties across 3 states. I always kept my work and family separate because I wanted Jay to love me for who I was, not for what I owned. As we pulled up to the grand entrance, the familiar pride rose in my chest at the sight of the perfect gardens and the uniformed valet rushing toward guests. It took me 3 years to acquire coastal paradise, and 2 more to renovate it until it was flawless. Every detail, from the polished marble floors to the crystal chandeliers, was my own decision. Jay passed the car keys to the valet while Valentina fixed her designer sunglasses and smoothed her perfectly styled blonde hair. She was striking, an appearance paid for with high-end salons and trainers. At 35, 20 years younger than Jay, she made sure no one forgot. "Remember," she told him as we walked toward the doors, "I want the penthouse suite. I don't care what they say about availability. Just get it." Jay agreed without question. It still shocked and hurt me to see how completely he obeyed her. The self-assured boy I raised had become a man who couldn't make a move without his wife's approval. We stepped into the beautiful lobby, and I couldn't help but smile at the familiar hum of activity. Jasmine, the front desk manager, looked up, and her eyes widened when she spotted me. But I gave her a small signal to stay quiet. I wasn't ready for them to know my identity just yet. "Good afternoon," Jasmine said warmly but with professionalism. "Welcome to Coastal Paradise Resort. How can I assist you?" "Reservation for Carter," Jay replied. "We're supposed to have the penthouse suite." Jasmine typed quickly as she checked. "Here's your reservation, Mr. Carter. You're confirmed for our Coastal Paradise Deluxe Suite, but the penthouse is fully booked for the duration of your stay." I saw Valentina's expression stiffen. Her jaw clenched, and her eyes flashed with annoyance beneath her flawless makeup. "That's unacceptable," she snapped. "Do you know who we are? I clearly requested the penthouse when we booked." Jasmine stayed composed, though I saw her shoulders tighten. "I apologize for any confusion, Mrs. Carter. The deluxe suite is beautiful and includes a private balcony." "I don't want to hear about some second-rate room," Valentina cut in, raising her voice enough for other guests to stare. "I want the penthouse, and I want it now." I stepped forward, hoping to calm things. "Valentina, maybe we could—" Before I finished, she spun toward me, her face twisted with rage. Don't you dare speak! She shouted, her voice echoing across the marble floors. Jasmine, or whatever your name is. Ignore anything this old woman says. She doesn't matter. She's just the help we brought along. Conversations in the lobby went silent. My face burned as humiliation washed over me. But she continued. Don't talk to the old woman! She shrieked, pointing at me like I was trash. She's just the servant, the nanny. Don't waste your time on her. I stood there frozen. My mouth was dry, and my heartbeat pounded so fiercely, I thought it might burst through my chest. In my 72 years, no one had ever spoken to me with such spite, with such pure disrespect, and certainly not in front of strangers. What followed cut deeper than anything she'd said. Jay threw his head back and laughed. Not the uneasy laughter someone gives to diffuse tension, but a laugh of real amusement, like watching his wife tear me down in public, was comedy. Oh, wow, Valentina, he said, wiping at his eye. You're awful, but she's not wrong. Mom, just let us handle this, okay? Go sit somewhere. The betrayal struck me like a blow. This was my son, the boy I raised alone, the one I nearly broke myself for, sacrificing everything to give him a better life. And he laughed at my humiliation. Jasmine's face turned pale, a mix of shock and pity that only deepened the wound. Around the lobby I heard whispers and saw guests pointing. Some had their phones up, probably recording every second of this disaster. Ma'am, Jasmine said gently, her voice kind but still professional. Maybe you'd like to wait in the lounge while we sort out the room issue, Jasmine suggested gently. Before I could respond, Valentina let out a dramatic, exaggerated sigh. Yes, take the old woman somewhere she won't shame us anymore, and make sure someone keeps an eye on her. She tends to wander off. Jay chuckled again. Strangers were staring, and I felt my heart shattering into tiny fragments. I wanted to disappear, to flee from that stunning lobby, from my cruel daughter-in-law, from my sneering son, and never return. But something deep inside me, some last remnant of the strength that had built this empire, held me upright. I locked eyes with Jasmine. There was silent panic in her expression. She knew exactly who I was. She understood that one word from me could have Valentina escorted out so quickly. Her designer heels wouldn't even graze the floor. Yet I stayed silent. I picked up my small suitcase and walked toward the elevator, my spine straight, despite the crushing humiliation clinging to me. Behind me, Valentina was still berating Jasmine about the penthouse, her tone soaked in the privilege of someone who had never earned a thing in her life. As the elevator doors closed, I met Jasmine's eyes one last time. She gave a subtle nod, a message that she understood, that she was sorry, and that she was waiting for my cue. I had built this empire from absolutely nothing, employing more than 300 people across my locations. I was respected in the industry, sought after by other hoteliers, known for fairness and integrity. Yet in that lobby, I was reduced to a worthless old woman being screamed at by her son's wife, while my son laughed at my suffering. As the elevator climbed to the 12th floor, each illuminated number stirred something inside me. The hurt was still raw and deep, but another emotion began rising with it. Resolve. The next morning I woke in a place that should have felt like paradise, but instead resembled a punishment. My room faced the shoreline, the waves brushing the flawless beach. The sunrise cast pink and gold across the sky, colors that normally stole my breath, but I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only the shell. I had slept little. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Valentina's sneering voice. She's just the help. Jay's laughter echoed behind it as I questioned whether I could have handled things differently, though I knew the real issue wasn't my reaction. The truth was that my own family treated me as if I held no value. A gentle knock at the door cut through my thoughts. When I opened it, Jay stood in the hall. He looked uneasy but showed no trace of guilt. "Mom, we're heading to breakfast. Valentina wants you to watch the kids by the pool after so we can go to the spa." No hello. No good morning. No question about how I'd slept. Not even a mention of the scene in the lobby. Just another command disguised as a request. "Jay?" I said softly. "About last night." He dismissed me with a wave. "Mom, don't blow it out of proportion. Valentina was just stressed about the room. You know how she is when things don't go her way." Out of proportion. That was how he described his wife publicly degrading me. "She called me a servant," I whispered. "She screamed at me in front of strangers." He shifted his weight and looked away. "She didn't mean it. That's just Valentina being dramatic. Can we not do this? We're trying to enjoy our vacation." I studied him, searching for the child I remembered. The little boy who would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who brought me dandelions and called them sunflowers, who once told me I was the strongest person alive. That child was gone. In his place stood a 47-year-old man who prioritized his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. "Okay," I said, the word bitter on my tongue. "I'll watch the kids." Relief washed over his face. "Great! We'll probably be gone all day. Spa first, then lunch, maybe some shopping. That's fine, right?" Of course it wasn't fine. I had imagined this trip as a chance for family connection, to get to know my grandchildren and feel like I belonged. Instead, I was being treated as free childcare. But I nodded. Refusing would only spark another argument. And I'd learned long ago that preserving the peace mattered more than being heard. The dining area was full of guests enjoying breakfast. Valentina had secured a window table, the prime spot, and was already barking orders at the staff like she ran the property. "I want fresh squeezed orange juice, not that stuff from concentrate." She snapped at the waiter, a young man named Terrell I remembered from previous visits. "And make sure the eggs are cooked exactly 3 minutes, not a second more or less." I could see Terrell trying to stay composed, but the strain in his eyes gave him away. I had trained my employees to deliver outstanding service, but Valentina was testing even their limits. My grandchildren, Zuri and Deshawn, 8 and 10, sat silently at the table with their eyes glued to their tablets. They barely reacted when I approached. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said to Zuri, reaching to brush a loose strand of hair from her face. But Valentina's hand shot out to stop me. "Don't touch her hair. It was styled yesterday, and I don't want it messed up." I pulled back as though I'd touched something burning. Zuri didn't even glance away from her screen. "Kids, say good morning to Grandma Renee," Jay muttered, sounding uninterested. "Morning," they echoed together, still glued to their devices. I sat in the only chair left, the one turned away from the view of the resort. Valentina had claimed the best seats for herself and her family, leaving me the leftover spot like an afterthought. "Renee," she said flatly without turning my way. "After breakfast, you'll take the kids to the pool. Make sure you apply sunscreen every hour. Zuri burns easily, and if she so much as gets a little pink, I'll hold you accountable." I nodded, swallowing the words I wanted to speak. "And keep them away from the deep end. And don't let them eat snacks by the water. They're full of preservatives. Also, if they need anything at all, call me right away. Don't try to manage it yourself." Each instruction felt like a tiny wound. Another reminder that she didn't trust me to look after my own grandchildren without monitoring me like a hired sitter. "How long will you be at the spa?" I asked. Valentina finally turned her eyes toward me, cold and unbothered. "As long as we choose. This is our vacation, not yours. You're here to assist." Jay said nothing, eyes on his phone, completely checked out. I wondered when he'd become the sort of man who'd let his wife speak to his mother like a maid. After breakfast, I ended up at the pool with Zuri and Deshawn, trying to start small talk while they stayed buried in their screens. All around us, other families laughed, splashed, and truly enjoyed being together. We looked like strangers who happened to share a last name. "Grandma," Zuri said suddenly, and my heart lifted, hoping she wanted to connect. "Mom says you used to clean houses for rich people. Is that true?" The question felt like a slap. I had worked my entire life. I had never cleaned someone else's house. I had built an empire from the ground up. I had created jobs for hundreds of employees and earned respect in a male-dominated industry. Yet in Valentina's twisted version of me, I was nothing but a maid. "No, sweetheart," I replied gently. "I'm a business owner. I build hotels." Deshawn looked up from his tablet for the first time all morning. "Mom says you make up stories about being important because you're embarrassed about being poor." His words knocked the breath from my lungs. Valentina hadn't only humiliated me in public. She'd poisoned my grandchildren against me, filling their minds with lies so they'd see me as some sad, delusional woman. "Your grandma isn't poor, and she doesn't invent stories," I said, keeping my tone steady. Zuri only shrugged. "That's what Mom says. She says you live in a tiny apartment and pretend you're rich to feel better about yourself." In reality, I lived in a penthouse overlooking the bay, worth more than most people would earn in their lives. But my grandchildren thought I was a pitiful old woman, living in filth and lying to feel important. For the next 6 hours, I stayed by that pool, watching children who barely glanced at me, while their parents enjoyed themselves at my expense. Other guests chatted politely with me now and then, and I answered with short, pleasant replies, all while feeling more and more hollow as time dragged on. When Jay and Valentina finally returned, they looked refreshed from spa treatments and a pricey lunch. Valentina's nails were freshly polished, her hair perfect. She looked like someone who'd spent the day indulging in luxury, which she had at a spa I owned, paid for by me. "How were the kids?" Jay asked without lifting his eyes from his phone. "They were fine," I said. What else could I tell him? That they thought I was a liar and a servant? That their mother had destroyed any chance of bonding? Good. Valentina said flatly, "You can watch them again tomorrow. We've got golf in the morning and lunch with some friends we met at the spa." I watched my son nod along with her plans, without asking how I felt, without considering that maybe I wanted my vacation to be something other than unpaid childcare. That night, sitting alone in my room facing the ocean I had worked so hard to make my own, I finally saw the truth. This wasn't a family holiday. It was a business trip where I had been assigned the role of the help. And instead of getting paid, I was covering the costs for the privilege of being treated like garbage. But as I sat in the dark, listening to the waves crash against the shore, something began to change inside me. The pain was still sharp, deeper than ever, but now it had company. Pure cutting anger. Anger at being taken for granted, at the lies, at being treated like I was nothing when I had built everything. By tomorrow, I decided, things were going to be different. The third day of our trip began like the first two, with Valentina dictating my list of duties while Jay sat nearby, nodding like an obedient assistant. This time they'd arranged a day trip to a nearby wine region, and I was to stay behind with the kids. "Make sure they eat lunch at exactly noon," Valentina said, carefully applying lipstick like she was handling glass. "And Zuri gets cranky if her sugar drops, so keep the granola bars I packed ready." I wanted to remind her that I had already raised one child and knew how to look after kids. But I'd learned that defending myself only earned me longer lectures and more condescending jabs. "We'll probably be back around 6, Jay added, still not looking up from his phone. "Maybe later if traffic's bad," Jay muttered. As they were heading out, I caught Valentina on the phone, using that sugary fake voice she pulls out when she thinks she's being sly. "No, we can't do dinner tonight. I'm stuck babysitting. I know, it's ridiculous, but it's only a few more days. Trust me. Once this is handled, we won't have to put up with it anymore." A shiver went through me. The way she said "once this is handled" didn't sound like she was talking about the trip ending. After they were gone, I dropped the kids at the resort's children's club, the very program I had designed myself so parents could actually relax. The staff were wonderful with Deshawn and Zuri, and for the first time since we arrived, I saw them laughing and running around with other children. With a bit of time to myself, I wandered the property. It had been ages since I'd seen my hotel from the perspective of a guest rather than an owner, and I wanted to get a true sense of how things were running. That's when I heard the conversation that shifted everything. Passing the pool bar, I recognized familiar voices coming from one of the private cabanas. Jay and Valentina were supposedly wine tasting, yet there they were, tucked behind the curtains, whispering with a couple I'd never seen before. "The truth is," Valentina was saying, "she's getting old, and old people don't last forever, if you know what I mean." A woman I couldn't place laughed. "You're terrible." "I'm just being realistic," Valentina replied. "Jay's an only child, so the inheritance is ours eventually. The real question is how long we've got to wait." My stomach twisted. I edged closer, keeping myself hidden by a towering palm. "And what about Mrs. Renee?" the man I didn't know asked. "Doesn't she have her own money?" Then came my son's voice, the one I used to trust with my whole heart. "My mom? Nah, she's broke. She lives in some tiny place, barely surviving on benefits. I've been supporting her for years." The lies rolled out of him like it was nothing. How long had he been spinning that story? I lived in a multi-million-dollar penthouse, earning monthly income most people never see in a year. Yet in Jay's made-up version, I was some dependent he generously carried. "That's why this trip is such a drag," Valentina said. "We have to haul her around because she can't afford anything. It's like being stuck with a pathetic pet you can't ditch." The other woman made a sympathetic noise. "Ugh, how awful for you. And I bet she figures you'll take care of her when she's elderly." "Over my dead body?" Valentina snorted. "The second she needs real help, she's getting shipped to a state-run facility. I'm not turning my house into a care home for some worthless old woman." I leaned against the palm just to stay upright. They weren't just planning to step back when I got sick. They were ready to toss me aside the moment I became inconvenient. But Jay's next words were the ones that broke something inside me. "The funny part is she still thinks she matters," he said, amused. "She spins these wild stories about being important, about owning companies. It's almost pitiful how out of touch she is." "Early dementia?" the strange man asked. "Maybe," Jay said. "Or maybe she just needs to feel relevant. Either way, it's embarrassing. Yesterday, she even told the kids she owns hotels. Hotels, can you believe it? Their laughter cut into me like glass. Well, Valentina said, at least we won't have to listen to her fantasies much longer. I give her maybe 5 more years, 10 tops, and then we're finally done pretending. A useless old woman who never achieved anything. That was how they saw me. I stayed there behind the palm, feeling my whole world crack. This wasn't idle venting about an inconvenient relative. My own child and his wife were talking about my death like it was a long-awaited break. The best part, Valentina added, is how grateful she is for any crumb of attention, like this trip. She genuinely thinks we invited her because we wanted her here. She has no clue the only reason she's along is to babysit so we can actually enjoy ourselves. More snickering. More easy cruelty. Does she even chip in for costs, Brenda? The other woman asked. Are you kidding? Valentina scoffed. She's totally useless financially. Jay pays for everything. Her bills, her food, even this vacation. She's just dead weight. Another fabrication. For years I'd been helping Jay with bills, covering his mortgage, paying tuition, even funding Valentina's shopping binges. The credit card statements came to my address, insanely high, and I still paid them, thinking I was supporting my family. The only good thing about having her around, Jay said, is she's an okay sitter. Free childcare, you know. She's so desperate for our approval, she'll do whatever we want. It's kind of hilarious. Totally, Valentina agreed, watching her try to win us over with expensive gifts. She always... I stumbled back, pressing a hand over my mouth to swallow a sob. The lies were betrayal enough, but hearing them reduce my life to a running joke, a burden to discard, was a wound straight to the soul. This wasn't about gratitude or respect anymore. It was something darker. This wasn't just about greed. It was about stripping me of my pride and rewriting my legacy into something small and vile. My thoughts flashed back to that night in the lobby. I'd been too ashamed to call them out because I didn't want to embarrass Jay. I thought I was shielding him from his wife's cruelty, but now I knew he wasn't just aware. He was part of the act. He had turned me into their punchline. He allowed it, and he was fine with it. I had spent my entire life working, building, and providing with pride, but they reduced all of it to a gag. To them, I was nothing but a bank, a sitter, a sad old woman they were counting down the days to discard. Something changed in me then. It wasn't the hot flare of rage from the night before. It was colder, sharper, solid as stone. They believed I was powerless. They believed I was pathetic. They were about to find out exactly who I was. I took out my phone and called Jasmine. She answered before the first ring finished. Ma'am, thank God. Are you all right? Did you see everything? I'm fine, I said evenly. I just need you to take care of something for me. I headed back to the kids' club and collected Zuri and Deshawn. They barely glanced up from their screens as I held out my hands. Come on, we're going somewhere. They blinked in confusion. Mom said we have to stay here, Deshawn muttered. Your mom is mistaken, I replied. Let's move. I took them to the shoreline and for the first time all trip, put my phone and wallet to the side. We built castles in the sand. We splashed at the edge of the waves, hunted for shells. And I told them stories about their father when he was small. For a moment it almost felt like what a real family vacation should be. But beneath it all, I carried the knowledge of what had to happen next. That evening, Jay and Valentina came back flushed and tipsy, ready to dump the children and head to dinner. They stepped into my room, but I was standing in front of the doorway. "We're heading out," Valentina said lazily, not even facing me. "You can go to sleep." "I won't be turning in just yet," I said calmly. She finally looked up, annoyance flickering. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, "you'll call the front desk and move to another room tonight, and in the morning you'll be checking out." They stared, baffled. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Jay asked. "Don't play innocent," I said. "I heard your little conversation at the cabana. I know exactly what you've been saying." Confusion on Valentina's face turned to fury. "You were spying on us?" she snapped. "You have no right." "I own this property," I said, my voice climbing. "I have every right, and I'm exercising it. You're leaving." I took a folded document from my purse and handed it to Jay. It detailed every dollar I'd ever covered for him. His face changed as he scanned the figures, realizing for the first time how much I had quietly provided. "You lied to me?" he asked. His voice edged with disbelief as he looked at Valentina. "She's the liar?" Valentina shrieked. "She doesn't own anything. She's just some desperate old maid who scrubbed houses." Just then, Jasmine entered with security at her side. "We were told there might be a disturbance," she said smoothly, watching me for direction. "Tell her!" Valentina shouted, pointing at me. "Tell her she's nobody." Jasmine glanced at me. I gave her a nod. "Mrs. Renee Carter," she said, composed and clear, "is not only the owner of this resort, she is the sole owner of all 17 coastal paradise locations across the country. She is our founder, our CEO, and the reason any of us are here." Valentina went pale. Her head jerked between Jasmine and me, panic filling her eyes. Jay stood frozen, the paper of my financial record still clutched in his hand, exposing every lie he'd told. "What does this even mean?" Valentina finally stammered. "It means," I said, my voice steady and absolute, "you'll be out of here tomorrow, and you'll cover your own costs. Every dollar you've spent, every brunch, massage, drink, it's all going on your card." "You can't do that," she yelled. "I absolutely can," I said, a hint of satisfaction slipping in. "And I will." Then I faced Jay. "As for you," I said, "my support ends here. No more mortgage payments, no more school fees. You're cut off." His expression collapsed. "Mom, please. We can work this out." "There's nothing to work out," I said. "You made your choice. You mocked me. You lied to your children about me. You don't get to keep my help." They turned to each other, stunned and wounded. They truly believed they had me under their thumb. They never imagined the woman they belittled was the one financing everything. That night, for the first time in years, I slept in peace. I woke each morning with a lightness I had forgotten. It took me far too long to understand that solitude doesn't equal abandonment, and that the family you choose can be stronger than the one you're born to. Jay and Valentina thought they were putting me in my place when they shamed me in that lobby. They weren't wrong about one thing. I did learn a lesson. I learned that I am worth defending, even if I'm the one who has to do it. And that realization changed everything. This story is fictional, though inspired by real experiences. Names and locations have been altered to protect privacy. It isn't shared to condemn, but to encourage reflection. How many mothers are suffering quietly inside their own homes? I'm genuinely curious. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Keep the peace in silence, or confront the truth to reclaim your voice? Your thoughts matter. Every story can guide someone else out of the dark. Stay blessed.